this would be really the first time in the history of America that we would fail to make payments that are due. We would simply not have enough cash to meet all of our obligations. And it's widely agreed that financial and economic chaos would ensue.
Yellen and her cabal of people at the Treasury putting more and more and more pressure on elected politicians to give them more money. It's kind of like if you and I went to the casino, we asked someone for some money, we went there, we spent all the money, we went back and asked for more. And you know, a lot of people are sort of equating it to, and telling Yellen, you're putting a gun to Congress's head again, to the American people even. We've actually got a clip so we can just show you how much he's begging and borrowing and bartering in order to try and get this done.
These negotiations should not take place with a gun really to the head of the American people, because...
But they are taking place with that gun to the head of the American people.
Well, it's important for Congress to meet a responsibility. Since 1960, the debt ceiling has been raised 78 times, 3 times during the prior administration, always with bipartisan support.
Well, as we can see from that, Nikki, you're seeing that they're basically saying, look, it's been done 60 times before, so do it again. They're even wheeling Biden out now to go and meet next week with as many Republicans as he can to try and get this through. And people have a bit of a short memory, I think, in the US. People don't realize that the reason that the House Speaker got elected, if we cast back to that, we covered it quite a lot on the channel. There was a load of backhanded doors, back deals being done to try and get the debt ceiling raised again. And this basically got this guy his job. And goodness knows what they're talking about and what kind of concessions or what kind of backroom deals they're going to be doing in order to get this through. It's quite ludicrous, really.
Well, let's say lawmakers don't raise the debt ceiling. What kind of consequences would the US economy face?
Well, it could be devastating, Nikki. Again, it's never happened before because, as Yellen says, it always gets done. Right. But if that did happen, the US wouldn't be able to service its debt. At the point that a country can't service its debt, it goes into economic freefall. And the biggest problem with the US economy doing this is that the world's global reserve currency, up until this point, really, until very recently, now we're seeing the rise of the renminbi, but it is predominantly in the world's reserve currency. You could see economic freefall, not just for the US, but all of the allies that are associated with that country.
And how realistic is the prospect of the US defaulting on its debt? And would that potentially drag the entire global economy down with the dollar?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Nikki. I think, look, there is a prospect. We're even seeing the IMF talking about this. The chief of the IMF came out this week and said, look, she's very concerned about multipolarity. She didn't use those words. She used another word, sort of like for the global economy. Well, I would disagree with her. I think there's a big problem for the US if this happens and her allies. But we're seeing now the rise of China in a really big and profound way, the rise of Russia, the rise of multipolarity. We're even seeing the Saudis turn around now and say, if you sanction our oil, then we're going to respond and sanction you. So it could be a huge big problem for the US. It could be the end of the behemoth, which is the US dollar, and the rise of a multipolar world order, which we talk about all the time here.
It's interesting, though, because after Janet Yellen there issuing this cry for help, if you like, she's planning to visit Japan and for a G7 finance ministers summit to assure Washington's partners that the US financial system is safe and sound. So despite the fact that several banks have collapsed in recent weeks and months, just how well is the American economy really doing?
Well, it's pretty crazy, Nikki, isn't it? Because I guess in the days before 24 hours news and social media, maybe they could get away with it. But if they don't think that the finance ministers of other countries are watching the news even, or reading anything, or even scrolling through Twitter, they'll see that the US economy is not doing very well at all. And again, I'll go back to that point about the IMF. If the IMF is saying there's trouble afoot, there's real trouble afoot. And if she thinks she can walk in and try and calm the markets at the same time as going on primetime American TV and telling America that the whole country is an absolute mess, it's a really funny message to send to the world.